Hey, welcome to the DFS Build NFL Edition. I'm Kevin, and that is Taylor. We're getting ready to go over the DraftKings main slate for Week 7. Hopefully, going to help you win some cash. That's the goal every single week. So the way we do this, we go game by game, highlighting all the plays that we like in that specific game, and also look at the odds, look at the matchups, and look at the ownership. So let's not waste any more time. But if this does help you in any way, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and come join us in Discord, which is 100% free. So first game here, Bears hosting the Saints. The Bears are 4.5-point favorites. That's not shocking. Chicago has been kind of up and down all year, but this is a pretty darn good spot for them. The Saints are not a very scary defensive team, and the Bears do actually give up a little bit of production too on the other side. So lots to like here. What stands out the most for you?
Yeah, they've both been better against the run than against the pass, but I do really like DeAndre Swift. 5,700 against New Orleans. I think we obviously saw a pretty big game for him the other day on Monday night, but that was kind of, I think, Ben Johnson just scheming to get him the ball in space. Like we saw, just trying to get him on the outside. He's not the greatest between the tackles runner. So I think they know that, and I think he's dangerous in space, and we kind of saw them trying to make that a bit of a priority last week. So I think in a good matchup against the Saints, with a decently high total for the Bears, I think this is a pretty good spot to go back to Swift at under 6K. Other than that, I do like the Chicago passing game, mainly Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze. New Orleans, like I said, has been a lot worse against the pass than against the run. So those three firmly on the radar. Chris Olave is getting a little more expensive at 5.4, but for the target share, he's like over 31%, I think, for the season still. He's too cheap, 5,400. The touchdowns haven't really been there, but I think they'll come. And just on a PPR site like DK, where you get there's a lot of value in just having a high target share like he does, still looks pretty underpriced. Not really a whole lot beyond that. I think you can always play Spencer Rattler because he's so cheap with Olave, but not a big priority.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said there. Obviously, both passing defenses can certainly be had. I'm a little bit wary of the fact that it's in Chicago and not in the Dome. Like, I don't think, it's not winter yet, so I don't think it really matters that much. But obviously, we would like the speed on the, Dome turf a little bit more if the game was in New Orleans. Yeah, Olave feels like good chalk. Like 27% is hefty. So, like, if there's something in that same range that you like a little bit more, like Rashee Rice, I don't really mind pivoting, but I also don't mind at all just pairing two guys like that because they both look really good on this slate. So Olave has had 10 plus targets in every game but one. Like, the role is there, and eventually the dude's going to score a touchdown, and when he does, he's going to completely nuke and get like 20 plus fantasy points. So feels like good chalk. Not really in on Spencer Rattler. The Bears have actually been bottom 5 against fantasy running backs, but I really want to play old ass Alvin Kamara. Not really. I don't think I want to do that. I think it's Olave or bust for me on the Saints. I think Rashid Shaheed is an okay try as a pivot off of that chalky play, and he's just obviously cheaper, so he's okay. For the Bears, Caleb Williams looks great. Don't love the ownership, but as usual, we don't really care. He's sub 6K. Great matchup. He may be without DJ Moore. Moore was hospitalized after Monday Night Football, so obviously it's a shorter week than usual for Chicago. So Roma Dunze is just going to look really, really good here. He's coming in at 6.6K. I think that's just a fair price. But if Moore is out, Luther Burden at 4.5K is going to look pretty darn appealing. Not safe by any means. There's no guarantee that Moore being out is going to elevate him to a crazy snap count or even production. But we saw him go off back in week 2 or 3 against the Raiders, I think. We had 100 yards and a touchdown. So he definitely is hit or miss. But if he has an expanded role at that price, I will be interested in him for sure. I think, what's his ownership coming in at? Don't see. It is non-existent because DJ Moore presently is kind of projected in. We'll see what happens with that. Just keep him on your radar, in the event that DJ Moore is in fact out. All right. So next up here, Miami and Cleveland. This feels like a really gross spot that I don't personally want a ton of, exposure to. But you do have some good plays. Devon Achane, Quinshon Judkins, Jalen Waddle. Those would be the three for the most part for me, with an emphasis on Judkins. just because the Miami Dolphins have been really bad defensively, specifically the 5th worst team against fantasy running backs. So Judkins, we kind of liked him as a GPP play last week. And this week he went up $100 and he's going to be very owned this time. I don't really care. I think he's a great play. How do you feel about him and the Miami guys as well?
Yeah, so I think the thing you have to mention with this game first is the weather. It might have like 50 to 60 mile an hour winds in Cleveland with rain potential. So it's pretty gross. I think Judkins, just based on the weather, is a pretty good play. I don't love that he's going to be owned more than he was last week when he kind of flopped as a pivot play, but good spot, good price tag on him. The role's been there pretty consistently. So I don't mind that. I don't mind Harold Fannin if Njoku out or no? Is that a thing yet?
I don't think officially, but I would imagine he is at risk of not playing because he had a knee injury and they wouldn't even update it yet. So that usually is not a good sign. Yeah, I didn't mention Fannin, but I'm with you 100% on Fannin.
Yeah, he's fine. I'm not going to love it if he's steamed with Njoku potentially out. He might be on a little bit, but 3.9 tight end, you know how tight end is. So I think that's okay. Achane getting up there. He's projecting for some ownership right now, which I kind of don't really buy. He's over 8K. We don't have C-Mac on the slate, so that could actually raise his ownership a little bit, but
I hope it does.
Totally love it. I don't really want anything to do with Miami in this spot. I think you can play someone like Jalen Waddle in a tournament always without Tyreek Hill, but don't really like anything. I think the Cleveland stuff is okay. That's kind of it, though. I don't really want a whole lot in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I do like Fannin maybe a little bit more than you do. I love Judkins, and I think the weather thing plays right into that. That's awesome if that's the case. Don't have any interest in the passing games at a high level. Fannin is just a value play, and with no Njoku, like Dylan Gabriel so far, he targets his tight end. So you like that for sure. Fannin specifically had 10 targets and 7 catches last week, and the week before, Njoku had 9 targets. So whether Dylan Gabriel is good or not is irrelevant. The Dolphins are a bottom 5 defense against fantasy tight ends. So sign me up for cheap Fannin. The other thing is going to be who was I looking at just a second ago, actually? Oh, yeah, Achane. So the thing with Achane, if he actually is going to get owned, I'm definitely out. I know it kind of stinks because last week we're like, the rushing production isn't there. Why are we paying for Achane? And then he goes off for like 33 fantasy points. So, of course, he does. But the Browns are number 1 against fantasy running backs. They do not give up anything, up front. So obviously the weather thing could play into like more volume. Maybe he gets there as a receiver. And true, it takes one play for Achane to get there for you. But I'm not really in on it. I think I'd rather go up to JT, or I like some other guys in that second tier at running back this week. All right, gross game. Let's move on. Chiefs hosting the Raiders. The Raiders have a 17 implied team total. Not great. KC looks really good. The Chiefs look like they are fully back. They had Xavier Worthy back 2 games ago. They're getting Rashee Rice back this week. So lots to like here, and Raiders are not a scary matchup. I do think, somebody mentioned this in Discord when we're talking about the Thursday Night Football game, and just like divisional games just have a weird thing about them where like you can think the matchup really favors one side, and then it just doesn't really matter because the other team knows you so well, and they're going to get up to play even more so than usual. So there's always the possibility that the Raiders really come to play and try to mess things up for KC. But on paper, KC looks like the aggressor here. Mahomes comes in with the highest price at quarterback. If Jaden Daniels wasn't on the slate, I'd be all for it. Both of them are very owned right now. We'll see if that holds. If it gets to the point where Jaden is like uber chalk and Mahomes is getting a little bit ignored, I don't mind a pivot there in tournaments. So he looks good. And then Rashee Rice, man, I'll stop there because 5.6K Rashee Rice in his game back. Like there is obviously the possibility they limit him or don't have him like be like the focal point right away, but he's just too cheap for how good he is and what he was doing before he got hurt and suspended.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more uncertainty there than the field would lead you to believe. Like significant ownership on him is a lot of confidence that he's going to just step right back into a huge role and be totally fine. Like he did tear his ACL last year. He's been out well over a year now, I think, or about a year with the suspension and stuff. Like there's no guarantee that he's just going to be the guy because they do spread it around quite a bit. There is still Travis Kelce, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown. These guys exist, and Mahomes has never been a guy to kind of focus in on one receiver, beyond Kelce, of course. But like, I think it's okay. Like, he is cheap. He's 5,600. The matchup's a good one. So there's certainly payoff potential, and I see why he's owned. I just think this is ownership you can be getting away from. Like, I don't think he's any sort of must play at 5-6 on a full Sunday slate, especially when there is value at other positions, including receiver. So I get it. I don't love it. I think Mahomes is a perfectly fine play. I think you can make a case for Kelce, Worthy, especially Worthy, like more expensive than Rice. I don't think anyone's going to play him. So if you like double stack Mahomes with Kelce and Worthy, that's just a very different way to get a build for this game while still getting pretty significant upside. So I do kind of like the KC side overall. I also like the Raiders in this game because they're cheap and they're likely to be playing from behind. Kansas City's defense really hasn't been quite up to par overall this season. So you can get Geno at 4,700. Michael Mayer is still cheap if Brock Bowers is out. Jacoby Myers, in theory, is a good play. Hasn't really come through at all this season, but 5,500, I don't mind that at all. And then Genty, of course, the bell cow for 7K, I think is pretty good.
Yeah, man, 3-5 for Mayer. He got there last week. He was a great play. You were all over him when he was a little bit cheaper. Still not that expensive. If Brock is out, he should be in your cheap tight end player pool. I mean, Geno Smith is really cheap. They're probably going to be playing from behind. From that perspective, I think he's an okay punt. I'm not really feeling it, really, because KC is a pretty good defensive team. The big thing here is I am into the Rashee Rice chalk a lot. You bring up a lot of good points. I was already kind of, eyeing Xavier Worthy as a leverage play because he's only $500 more. He's more explosive. And if the field is all going to go towards Rice, like, it just makes sense to pivot to Worthy, So I'm still going to get to Rashee a ton. I think even though there are some concerns there with like the long layoff and what his role actually will be, I think that's all kind of baked into the 5.6 price. So like, we can certainly take that risk. If you want to have that be the chalk you eat, I don't really mind it at all, but I will definitely be looking to get some leverage on that ownership. Like I said, already big on Mahomes, but for me, it's mostly Mahomes, Rashee, a little bit of Michael Mayer, and then Genty, like you said. 7K for Genty, still a little bit too cheap. Does have a lower floor than you want at that price point, but he's cheaper than HN. He's cheaper than JT. So he does look pretty good, and he is involved as a receiver if they end up trailing, which they probably will. All right, Minnesota hosting the Eagles. Eagles seem kind of lost. Minnesota may or may not get JJ McCarthy back. Carson Wentz is banged up. I don't know which one of those is better for them. I know the Eagles aren't a great matchup. The Giants made us think twice about that by scoring 34 points against them last time out. But the Eagles do technically still have a pretty good defense. Like, Jefferson at 7-6 feels a little bit rich for me. Like, I don't think it's that great of a matchup. If he goes overlooked a little bit, like we always talk about, like low owned Justin Jefferson, sure, sign me up for that. I'm a little bit interested in other guys this week personally. And the Eagles just feel like a mess, man. On the road against a good Vikings defense, like, I don't really want to pay a premium for Saquon. I do think Jalen Hurts, if nobody's going to be on him, is kind of interesting as a pivot away from chalky Mahomes and Jaden Daniels. But it's really just an ownership thing. You're just saying, like, oh, well, let's hope Jaden Daniels and Mahomes both suck, and Hurts, who is struggling, doesn't, right? So you can certainly go Hurts and A.J. Brown. You can always play Saquon. I'm just not that into this game, I guess. Should I be?
Yeah, I feel like there's weird ownership in this game. Like, there's certainly shootout potential here. Like, neither team has been great. The Eagles have weird vibes. The Vikings have a quarterback situation. But we haven't seen Minnesota on a main slate in a long time. They had a couple like primetime game. They've had Europe games. They just had their bye. So they've been kind of off the radar. But the prices are pretty good. Like Jordan Mason at 6,200 with Aaron Jones still out is very interesting, I think. Jefferson at 7.6. I think Jordan Addison at 5,100 as a Rashee Rice pivot is pretty good. Like, he's a deep threat. He had involvement when he came back from his suspension in the last game. Hawkinson's only 3,600. McCarthy's only 5K if he's in the lineup. I kind of like this whole thing. Like you can stack the main Vikings with the 7,700 Saquon Barkley, who doesn't really seem like he's going to get any ownership at all this week either. It's two good teams. It's a tight spread. It's an indoor game. I don't really see why the field's not getting there. So like if they're not, I'm pretty happy to be over on pretty much everything in this entire game.
Well, I mean, I can just say for myself, like I don't really love targeting these defenses, Minnesota in particular, and just the struggles with the Eagles. Like obviously, if everybody's going to be going away, really talented, explosive options, we should have interest in them in tournaments. I'm just personally not really feeling it, but I understand the logic for sure. Like all these guys are not projecting. The only guy who's projected for ownership is AJ Brown, and that's a price play, 5.8K. He got more involved last time out as well. So eventually he's going to score touchdowns and go off and stuff. So, I mean, you can certainly take your chances if you want to. All right, Panthers.
Like this game could easily be 38-35, and
Sure.
no one's going to be on it. Like the
Kind of low
Seattle
total,
Tampa Bay
though.
game the other day.
Only 43.5 total. A little bit.
It's not super low relative to the slate, I think.
Next one, it has a 42.5 total. I don't know. It's not much lower. Jets and Panthers. I actually would hit the over on this one personally. Brees Hall is coming in at monster chalk, 6.3K. Maybe this is a trade me show off game. I don't know. But the Panthers are a pretty good matchup for running backs. You got Justin Fields, who was a just horror show last week. 5 fantasy points against the Broncos. Panthers aren't the Broncos, though, so 5.7 for Fields is kind of a discount. He looks pretty good. Don't mind him if you want to save at quarterback. Tet 6.4 feels a little bit given the matchup. Well, actually, Sauce Gardner hasn't even been that good this year. Taylor got blipped out for a second, so we'll just keep rolling. Actually, let me switch it back to this so you guys can – there we go. So you guys can actually see something other than just my face while we're going. So this game, Panthers and Jets – the big thing is, like, is Chuba Hubbard going to be back? Because if he is back, then that kind of brings Rico Dowdle way down. Obviously, if he is in, then we're just not playing Panthers running backs. If he's out, then we can entertain Rico at almost 7K. Feels a little bit rich, but the guy has put up 30-plus fantasy points in 2 straight games. So if that ends up being the case, then we can certainly entertain that. We'll just have to wait and see. One guy I really, really like is Mason Taylor at 3.4K, especially – if Garrett Wilson ends up missing this game. Garrett Wilson's banged up. 2 games ago, Mason Taylor was all over him at the time. 12 targets, 7 catches, very involved. And by the way, the Panthers are really bad against tight ends. Literally the second worst defense against fantasy tight ends on the year. So Mason Taylor is very cheap at 3.4. If you don't want to pay a premium for tight end, that is one guy you can drop all the way down with. If Garrett Wilson doesn't play, I don't really want to play like Jets wide receiver roulette necessarily. You could be looking at guys like Josh Reynolds, Arian Smith. Just none of that feels really good. I think Mason Taylor and Brees Hall would be how I get exposure to the Jets offense for this game. On the other side, Bryce Young, Tat, I think it's okay. The Jets are definitely a beatable defense. They looked a lot better last week against the Broncos, only giving up 13 points in London. But I still just don't like fully trust it. I think for the most part, I'm okay with the Brees Hall chalk just because the projection is good and the price is nice. But if he's going to be almost 30% owned, I don't mind getting different there either, just because the Jets offense is very hard to trust. There's no doubt about it. All right, so moving on to the next game here, Patriots and Titans. Mike Vrabel returning to Tennessee. You better believe that narrative is going to be a thing. He's going to want to win this game. So, I mean, I anticipate the Patriots winning, but somebody in Discord, I think it was Aaron, he said, this is just how these, sometimes these divisional games are not divisional game, but these narrative street games go. And also he specifically mentioned that the Titans just fired their head coach and their offensive lineman coach, who was the father of the coach, by the way. He's also gone now. So just a weird situation where maybe, just maybe, it lights a fire under the Titans, arse here. And if that's the case, then maybe Tennessee comes out and surprises us a little bit. I think Taylor was also kind of alluding to the fact that we kind of liked Cam Ward in the Titans offense as a very, very overlooked, and rightfully so, stack last week against the Raiders. But were we a week early on that? It's impossible to know for sure. So Cam Ward remains very cheap. You can get cheap access to Calvin Ridley if he's in, and of course Alec Ayomanor as well. So I don't feel good about it. I didn't really feel great about it last week. Felt better about it last week than I did this week. In general, I think going with the Patriots defense is probably the way to go. But I do also feel like using the chalk defense almost always just goes really horribly. That said, Patriots defense looks great at 3.1K. Very, honestly, pretty cheap given the matchup. Drake May at 6'3" against the Titans. He projects well. He's still not that expensive. He looks good. You can pair him with Stephon Diggs. You can roll him out there naked due to his rushing ability. The guy gets it done basically every week. He smashed last week. He was my number one play at the quarterback position last week, and he got almost 30 fantasy points. He's at 21 plus in 4 of his last 5. Dude has arrived, so we can certainly play him with confidence. He's not like the quarterback play this time for me, but he's not that far away. So if you want to go a little bit away from like the Jaden Daniels, Mahomes tier where these guys are like 7K and save a little bit of money and get kind of a similar play, I think May looks totally fine. At running back, not really going to mess around with Stevenson, Henderson. Don't really want Pollard, but if you do want to lean into that Titans are going to somehow be better all of a sudden narrative, 5.4K Pollard wouldn't be the worst thing to do in tournaments. It's mostly Patriots or bust for me. And I think most people would tend to agree. Another interesting narrative is going to be the Giants still traveling to Denver. Obviously, the Broncos defense has been very suffocating lately. I think they haven't given up more than 11 points in 3 straight games, something like that. I mean, like we saw early in the year, they can be had a little bit, and they specifically can give up some rushing production. So on one hand, the Broncos could definitely just completely annihilate the Giants, who have their 2 best players right now are just rookie guys, Cam Scadaboo and Jackson Dart. Talented rookies who are not afraid of contact, and they are punishing runners, specifically Cam. And they could exploit that Denver, run defense a little bit here. So I do lean towards Denver. I like Bo Nix at 5-6 against the Giants. They are a good matchup. The Nick Sutton stack looks good. You can play J.K. Dobbins if you want. But unowned Cam Scadaboo, like in the same range as, Rico if Chuba's out, that kind of thing, not that much, $500 cheaper than, Ashton Genty if he ends up getting ownership. But Cam had like 34 fantasy points last week. 31, and he had 24 a few games before that. So Scadaboo definitely has a solid floor and a really nice ceiling. So definitely a guy in tournaments that I'm going to be having my eye on. Another guy is going to be Wan'Dale Robinson. The matchup is not great. Broncos pass defense can be pretty good, but he is also a guy who can just rack up a ton of catches. We've seen it at a very high level in the past. This year, not quite the same, but if they want to get him like really short and intermediate routes, he could end up feasting. And at 5.4, I think he's a decent PPR play. I don't really like the matchup. It's not something I want to do a lot of, especially since you have Olave and Rasheed right there in the same price range. But specifically because those guys exist, Wan'Dale is not going to be owned basically at all. So just something to think about for sure. At tight end, not really into Ingram or Theo that much. The Giants are just a punt defense. 2.2K for the Giants. On the road in a game they're expected to lose. I think they're touchdown dogs here. I mean, that's a good opportunity to create leverage right there. The Broncos offensive pieces, I don't think they're going to be that owned. So it's more of just a betting odds narrative to gain leverage there. And of course, just saving cash and punting. I typically do like to punt with my defense. It hasn't really been going that well this year. Like, as I feel like you're often playing like the Titans or the Saints, and just like a team that like definitely going in, usually you're not thinking has a shot to actually pay off. But the Giants are kind of underrated, especially up front. So I do think they are kind of sneaky, and obviously just because of the savings, you don't have to worry about it that much. All right, Colts and Chargers in LA. Colts kind of have to go across the country here a little bit. I talk about this a lot. The cross-country travelers, it can be dicey. Not like super confident in the Colts. Oh, here we go. We got Taylor back. He was indisposed for quite a bit there. I just kept rolling, man. So we are on the Colts and Chargers. And basically I'm just talking about the whole fact that like when these teams have to travel across the country, it definitely can put, added pressure and just like drain them a little bit. It doesn't seem to impact everybody, but are you worried about that at all with the Colts heading out to LA?
No, it seems like more of an effect on Western teams going east because you're losing hours. So for the Colts, going east to west,
so that's Aaron Rodgers.
That's a big deal.
Aaron Rodgers is always bad at that.
Well, he's an idiot, so there's also that. Plus,
Okay,
the Colts
fair.
were in LA like 2 weeks ago, so it's not a totally foreign thing for them. They played the Rams in LA, I think, in like week 4 or 5. So
That's
similar
true.
situation. It was a pretty good game that kind of got there from a fantasy standpoint. So not worried about that.
Good point.
Thanks.
All right. So obviously the big thing here is JT first. Like there's other plays in this game for sure, but JT's 8.8K, almost 9K, top projection for running backs, going to have some ownership. I tend to think this is a slate with a lot of good value, a lot of chalky value, but probably too much value and not enough other guaranteed studs for me to feel good about fading JT. We also had a conversation when you look at like what is a guy probably going to get me versus what the ceiling might be. I kind of don't care about the ceiling because I'm just like, I mean, obviously I want that too. I would love him to get 35 fantasy points if I'm going to pay almost 9K for him, but I'm going and getting perhaps the most stable play of the slate and not really caring about the price. Where do you stand there?
It's tough with JT because he's kind of like Derrick Henry. Like he's pretty reliant on touchdowns and huge rushing yardage totals just because the receiving stuff isn't always great. And the matchup against the Chargers is not particularly good either. And he's 8,800. There's not really anyone in that price range. We don't have Puka. We don't have Christian McCaffrey on this slate. So it is unique in that he's kind of the only guy you're paying all the way up for. But we've mentioned other stuff. We'll get to other guys too, like CeeDee Lamb if he's in the next game. Justin Jefferson, Saquon Barkley, all these guys who are priced a tier below who have the same ceiling, I think. So I will have JT. Like he's not a guy I'm ever going to fade in a full like portfolio of lineups, but I think if I'm building one lineup, it's pretty unlikely to have Jonathan Taylor in it.
Yeah, I think I might go the other way this week just because, like, okay, first of all, yeah, CD, but I think you can comfortably get CD and JT for one, and then you just don't have like a Puka or a Jamar Chase. I mean, there's Devontae, but I just think there's not really as many, like you said, no CMAC either. There's not as many stable elite options here that you can actually trust. There are good plays littered across the entire slate, no doubt about it. But that's just my approach here. There are other options.
At 8,800, he needs to get 30 plus for you to really be happy with that. And I think I'm willing to bet against that.
I mean, he's done it now 3 times and he's had 26 plus 4 in his last 5. Like, we might need to just start embracing.
The Chargers are good.
I'm not game log watching. I'm looking at his role and how explosive he's been.
That's exactly what you're doing.
It's a trend. Like, remember last year when everybody was like, Saquon's going to cool off eventually. Not really. Or 2 years ago when C-Mac was having his crazy year. Nope, never happened.
I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I'm just saying at 8,800, you really need him to get there in a tournament for that to be worth it. And if he gets 25, I think I can live without it.
All right. Okay, so there are other plays here. Kimani Vidal is one of them. 5.5K for Vidal. Kind of interesting considering he got like 70% of the workload for the Chargers last week. Super cheap considering the volume. I don't love the matchup against the Colts, but in terms of sheer value and volume, like how are we actually feeling good about fading this guy?
It's only a 1-game sample, so I don't think we can have that much confidence in that role to continue. Like maybe it does, but I think there's an equal chance maybe it doesn't. So if he's going to be super owned at 5.5, not exactly a proven commodity.
Well, he's not that owned. That's the thing.
I see him at like 24%.
Where are you looking? I'm looking at not updated projections, I guess, but I'm seeing him at 14%.
I would take the under on 24 for sure, but
yeah,
I think he'll be double digits, and I think it's okay. I just don't know if I have that much confidence.
I agree with that. I mean, I definitely didn't have confidence in him going into last week, and it was a way better spot. But that's game log watching, I guess, if there ever was it?
Well, with him, like he was a backup. We only have 1 game to go off of,
right?
In this role, so he could be a smash. Like if he's in this role for several weeks, maybe he's 7K in a couple weeks and we look like morons. I just think at 5-5, tough spot. I just prefer the passing game, I think, on both teams in this game.
I do think that's an interesting component of the decision-making process, though. It's not like it's not just that you're like, oh, this guy might be expensive later, I have to use him now. That's not what it is. It's like projecting, why are they going to be expensive later? Is it because right now they're going to continue to be a god? He very well might, because Chargers offense is
too
decent.
cheap for sure.
Because think about it, he's not the same guy as Omarion Hampton. He's not as good as him, but he's in the same role all of a sudden. If that actually stays, that is the question. Will the role stay the same? If it does, he is an absolute smash at 5.5K.
I think, didn't it come out before the game that Hassan Haskins was going to be the guy? And then
yeah, it did actually, by like a beat reporter, and then somebody on Twitter was like, they like pretended they were circling his name or like putting him on a list of like reporters you can't trust anymore. And it's true.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, no kidding. Again, still more to like here. I think, QJ still is out. So Ladd and Keenan get a boost. Trey Harris is an okay punt. Arondé Gadsden popped off last week. He had like 8 targets, I think 12 fantasy points. So he's going to be in play. I mean, this is the week of punt tight ends, dude. Like, pick your poison. There's so many.
It's also Tyler Warren again because he's still pretty
I know. His price, by the way, it just never comes up. 5.2K.
It's like coming up like $100 a week, which is not fast enough.
Speaking of guys that probably should be like 6.5K, at some point this year, Tyler Warren is one of them. But it's tough because it's like there's him and like 2 other guys on the slate where you're like, yeah, I feel pretty good about them. But like there's so many punts. What are the odds of, I mean, in the name of Hunter Long, what are the odds? What are the odds of all these punts not hitting? I don't think the odds are good. So I want to take my chances personally. That said, Tyler Warren has been a beast. Let's watch those game logs, baby. 16 plus fantasy points in 3 straight. NFL does have ebbs and flows though. So like he could certainly hit a wall here against the Chargers. It wouldn't be that shocking. Ladd's price did not come up very much. He's been pretty good last 2 weeks, popped off last week. So no QJ, more volume. He looks good at 6K. Who are you circling here in this game? I know you're not really in on JT at that price point, but for these other guys, who are you thinking like, oh yeah, I definitely want to play a lot of these guys?
Yeah, I think if you are going to be under on JT, it just makes sense to play the passing game. Daniel Jones, 6K once again. Obviously, he has rushing equity as well. Like he could get goal line work, and maybe that fucks Jonathan Taylor. So don't mind that. Michael Pittman, speaking of guys whose prices never really rise, 5,100 again. Been pretty good in his role with Daniel Jones. Natural stacking partners are Pittman and Tyler Warren. So happy to go back to that again. Not really in on anybody else. Like I'm not playing Alex Pierce and Josh Downs and stuff like that, but I'm with you on McConkey. I think Keenan Allen's worth going back to the well with. Justin Herbert not going to be mega chalk like he was last week, which is interesting, I think. So a lot of ways to play this game. And even Gadsden, I think that's a pretty good call too.
Yeah, dude, the Keenan thing, him versus Ladd, only a difference of 20 fantasy points. No big deal. Don't worry about
it.
Yeah. So that's just one of those situations where I don't think anybody's going to really feel good about being on the right side of it until it happens. They're both good plays in a vacuum. The prices are pretty similar. I just feel like, if I go all in on Ladd, Keenan's going to get 25 fantasy points. If I play Keenan to save the extra $400, Ladd's going to nuke again. And I'll be like, why didn't I play Ladd? But guess what? Here's a stat that I don't think many people realize. The Colts are the 4th worst defense against fantasy wide receivers on the year. I didn't really think that was the thing. I didn't think they were giving up that much production, but here they are. So, Herbert and Ladd and Keenan stacks, maybe even a little bit of Gadsden. I don't mind it. I think it's going to be kind of overlooked here. They're not looking like chalk, especially like you said, not just the Colts passing game as leverage to JT, but Vidal. If he's actually going to pick up a lot of steam, ignoring him and going with like Herbert, Ladd, or just firing up any of those Chargers receivers by themselves, that is one way to approach it as well. All right, next game here. And by the way, I said the Rams are on this slate, right? Because I was talking about London. Yeah, I was talking about Devontae. If he was on the slate, he would be chalk because he's like 6'7", I think, and there's no Puka. All right, Packers in the desert against the Cardinals. They are about touchdown favorites here. We don't know if Kyler Murray's going to be back. I think he was back at practice. Not sure it really matters. I don't feel like I'm going to be targeting Arizona offensive pieces a lot. Packers have at times struggled against tight ends. So Trey McBride at 5'7", he's going to remain in play. I think for me personally, the big thing here is probably just Josh Jacobs due to volume and how productive he's been. But I will say I do not mind taking a chance on 4-7 Matthew Golden because the Cardinals have given up production through the air, and that guy is going to score a touchdown at some point. Plus, he's been very active. I think he's got like 10 plus fantasy points in 3 straight games, so he's starting to heat up a little bit.
Yeah, I think Romeo Dobbs is also totally fine. 5K flat, been getting decent volume. So I like both of them. Jacobs is another reason I'm not really in on JT as much. Just he's $1,000 less. Very similar play. So he's relying on scoring as well. But going into the Dome, Green Bay has a high total. Arizona is a team you can exploit. So very in on Jacobs. I do like McBride a lot. I think Brissett, if he's starting again at 4,500, is totally viable in the name of Jacoby Brissett last week. Flash.
Did you end up getting to
Flacco.
him a lot, or were you just mostly on Flacco?
Brissett was my highest exposed quarterback on the slate. I had him in like 11%.
That's crazy.
Unfortunately, a lot of those lineups had Marvin Harrison. So
yeah, well, naturally.
that didn't go well. But yeah, I mean, he's 4,500. They're going to be throwing in theory. It's indoors. So I think he's fine if he starts. I hope he does. I don't think Brissett is a major downgrade, if he is a downgrade at all for guys like McBride. Might even be an upgrade. So pretty easy little skinny stack right there with an owned tight end. Bring it back with Jacobs. I like that a lot. And then the Golden thing I like as well. Jordan Love, maybe like as Jacobs leverage. Don't really want it though.
No, he's had one good game all year. I think he's been a good real life quarterback, but the way the Packers offense works, once they get like near the goal line, basically Love signs off, man, he's done. And it's just Jacobs season. So obviously that could change at any point. That's the whole point. That's the whole reason of looking at different ways to approach stacking and stuff internally. So you can play Love with Golden if you'd like to. Hold on a second. My computer's about to die. So I gotta plug it in on the fly here. So I just don't love what I've seen from Love from a fantasy perspective for most of the year. So if I do anything here, really, it's going to be Jacobs. Worth noting, he was sick in the last game, throwing up before, during, and after, and he still put up like 30 fantasy points. He's still kind of battling an illness, so it's, who knows if like it was just starting and now it's trickled over and like maybe he's got a virus. Like if he has like a bad virus or something that can weaken you, so like that's something to consider. But in terms of just sheer value and role and projection, or like he looks like a great play at $1,000 cheaper compared to JT and coming in a little bit less ownership. So as long as he's okay and healthy and everything, I agree. He looks like a good play for sure. All right, last game of the week. Very well may live up to the billing of being the game of the week. This has a disgusting 54.5 total. would imagine it lives up to it. It's in a dome. The Cowboys are terrible defensively. The Washington Commanders are a pass funnel defense. I like a lot of things here. Jalen Daniels feels like expensive chalk that I do not mind eating. His running has not gone away after the knee injury. He's been productive, 23 fantasy points. He had 2 turnovers against a decent Bears defense and still had 23 fantasy points on Monday Night Football. So he looks awesome. He's my quarterback 1 of the slate. The only reason why you don't want to play Daniels is price and ownership. I personally don't really care that much. Like I said before, I think there's so much value on the slate that you don't really have to worry about that. Dak does look good at $400 less and not nearly as much ownership. I don't mind that. Javonte at 6.7, CD in his first game back at 7.5. That's probably where my interest stops. But you could talk me into some of the other pieces with Scary Terry coming back. There's Debo, there's Ferguson. Like, there's a lot to like here.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing is Pickens and Lamb. Like, there's only a $200 salary discrepancy on DK between them.
Yeah.
Lamb is the guy, but he's also coming off an ankle injury. Pickens has been thriving. The ownership is skewing pretty heavily in favor of CD, which I understand, as the more established piece in this offense. But if it's something like CD's 20% owned and Pickens is 1% owned, I think I'm going to take Pickens at those odds in some lineups. You know, if you want to find the salary to get them both, that's totally fine too. But it's interesting because Pickens, I think, is better than that ownership might lead you to believe. In a cash game or whatever, you'd be playing Lamb, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm with you on everything else, like JCM, even Bill or whatever, like 6,100, great matchup. Rico Dowdle ran all over them last week. No issue with that. Debo, I like quite a bit at 6'2". Even Zach Ertz, 3,800, gets volume. Another punt tight end to consider. I think Ferguson is just kind of not on my radar as much with McBride right there and with Warren right there. But, as an ownership play, I think that's fine. But, yeah, it's pretty clearly the game of the week. Going to have a lot of interest in both sides. And the game stack is expensive, but pretty doable with all the value we have.
Yeah. Like I said, you can talk me into anybody in this game for the most part. I like the Pickens versus CD thing as far as like tournament strategy. I feel like though there's no price adjustment there for the real life roles they'll probably have. Certainly, if everybody's gonna be on CD and nobody wants to play Pickens, you could take the chance on CD being limited or more of as like a decoy or just Pickens having the better game, and then that works out for you. But in reality, if CD is actually 100% and they're going to use him like they normally would use him, you're paying way too much for Pickens and CD's way too cheap. So that's the way I would approach it, like to the point where like I don't care about ownership that much when it comes to those two guys. But hey, you're not wrong as far as like what you're thinking in terms of getting different in a hurry to close out the slate. That could be a lot of fun. One other thing, Bill Krosky Merritt, he had a fumble. And I think he had a second one that they ended up charging to Jaden Daniels. But like that he was like coming in and out of that game. Like he still had a good role. He had like 18 touches. But a little concerned if he could be like put in the doghouse or something if he drops that ball again. So I'm not going to not play him because he's 5'6" in a smash spot. Or 6'1", sorry. Still too cheap. He's still too cheap. So I think moral of the story of this slate is there are a lot of different ways to go. Like you could certainly go and pay for JT and CD and Jefferson if you want to, but like the mid-range for running back is kind of loaded, actually, a lot more loaded than I thought it was. So let's sign off with this. Like, where are you at, like, for your overall strategy? Like, what do you want to do if you had to map it out where you're like, for the most part, you're stacking this team or you're prioritizing this stud or that stud? Like, where are you starting your builds?
I think you kind of have to start it with this game because of the total and, both defenses being bad, both offenses are explosive and somewhat concentrated. So it kind of builds itself. Like there are ways to get different and still build into this game to where you're plus EV in the end, even in large field stuff. So I think the first thing you figure out is what you're paying for from this game, whether you're stacking Washington or Dallas or both, and then just kind of building it out from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is one of those slates where we have one game where it's very obvious and it's a don't get too cute situation where it's like you can do whatever you want everywhere else on the slate. Don't fade this game though, probably, right? And if you eat a lot of chalk, if you play Olave and Rashid and Vidal and JT or whatever, what you said before about Pickens versus CD, that could be the perfect way to close out the slate. And maybe instead of Jaden, you go get Dak for $400 cheaper or $500, whatever it is. And you have Dak with Pickens, unowned. And like that honestly might be all you need to close out the slate in this kind of game environment where there's a lot of attention on this game, but not on those two pieces. So something to think about for sure. If you want finalized picks and stacks, GPP plays, head over to our site, dfsbuild.com, and you can get access to all the premium stuff for just $5.99, plus everything else we do. NBA is coming up, MMA we do as well. Be sure to check that out. If anything we do in this video helps you, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. And also come join us in Discord. That is 100% free. Thanks for hanging out if you're here during the live show, and hopefully this helps you out in some capacity as you continue to get ready for week 7. Thanks for watching, and good luck this week.